Hey guys, tonight we're going to step into ancient Rome, not the version with sweeping battle scenes and emperors giving grand speeches, but the slower, smellier, and far more personal world of Roman hygiene. More specifically, we're talking about toothpaste. Yep, toothpaste. The gritty, oddly fragrant, and occasionally shocking stuff that Romans used to polish those pearly, or not so pearly, whites. Picture this, it's just before dawn. The city of Rome hums softly, still cloaked in a blanket of fog and charcoal-scented morning air. You're barefoot, wrapped in a linen tunic that's slightly too stiff from last night's olive oil rinse. You pad quietly through the waking streets toward the bathhouse, Rome's true social hub. You're not here just to bathe. You're here to perform your cleanliness. Think of it like the ancient version of your local spa, gym, and gossip cafe rolled into one. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, drop a comment with your location and local time. It's always fascinating to see who's winding down from where. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into the caldarium, the hot room of the bathhouse. Steam curls like ghosts from the stone benches. It smells like eucalyptus, sweat, and oiled bronze. You're handed a strigil, a curved metal scraper, and begin to slough off the day's grime. But it's not just your body getting a scrub. Dental hygiene is also on the Roman checklist. There's a tiny side room next to the baths, a kind of grooming station. Marble counters are lined with bone combs, tweezers, and pots of mysterious pastes. One bowl holds something white and dusty, almost glittering in the lamplight. You dip a damp finger into it. It's coarse, chalky, almost sandy. It smells faintly of ash and myrrh. This is Roman tooth powder. Romans didn't have toothpaste tubes like you do, no easy squeeze and swirl minty moment. Instead, they used dentifrices, dry powders they would moisten with water, vinegar, or sometimes saliva before rubbing it on with a cloth, finger, or twig. These powders usually included ingredients like crushed pumice stone, which is, yes, volcanic glass, burnt deer antler, and occasionally oyster shells. Basically, you're brushing your teeth with glorified beach gravel. And oh, it gets better. There's a bit of charcoal in the mix, not for aesthetic TikTok reasons, but because the Romans believed it absorbed bad odors. Whether it worked or just masked yesterday's garum sauce, think ancient anchovy paste, we'll let your imagination decide. As you stand there, polishing your molars with something that feels like exfoliating paste and smells like a burnt incense shop, you wonder, did this actually help? Historians still argue whether Roman dental powders were effective at cleaning teeth or just another way to flaunt status and dedication to beauty. And make no mistake, hygiene was social. You weren't brushing your teeth in the privacy of a bathroom. No, you did it alongside your friends, political rivals, and sometimes your mother-in-law. Grooming wasn't just maintenance, it was theater. As the air in the bathhouse thickens with steam and laughter, someone beside you casually spits a mouthful of minty vinegar and ash into a communal drain. Lovely. You try not to follow suit, but the taste lingers. It's sharp, earthy, like trying to swish with fireplace dust. And then comes the oil. After brushing, you rinse with a mix of warm water and a few drops of olive oil. Because why not? It's moisturizing, right? The oil glides down your teeth, coating them with a faint sheen that catches the flickering lamplight. You try not to think about how much dust is in the oil vat. Across the room, a wealthy-looking merchant finishes his grooming and slips a tiny silver pick into his robe. It's a toothpick. Romans were fond of them, and they were a real flex. Ivory, silver, even gold if you were feeling extra. Dental accessories were status symbols. You begin to wonder what happened before all this ritual. How did Romans even learn that teeth needed care? It turns out, some of the earliest Roman thinkers, Pliny the Elder included, had thoughts about it. He wrote about cleaning the teeth and freshening breath using ingredients like crushed eggshell, ashes of burnt mouse heads, more on that later, and finely powdered stones. Yes, even your friendly neighborhood philosopher might recommend cleaning your mouth with scorched rodent remains. You're welcome. The steam begins to clear a little as the window slats open. Outside, the city is stirring. You hear sandals slapping down the alleyways, the distant cry of a fishmonger, and the occasional bark of a dog. Morning in Rome is chaotic and alive. But you're here, teeth freshly scrubbed, body slick with oil, and senses slightly overwhelmed. Still, there's something calming about this ritual, isn't there? The idea that even 2,000 years ago, people fussed over their smiles, worried about morning breath, and paid extra for minty powders, even if they doubled as floor polish. A Roman nobleman steps in beside you, dripping with expensive oil. He glances at your tooth powder and chuckles softly. "You're using the Greek blend," he says. "Good for breath, but bad for the gums." You nod politely. Tomorrow, maybe you'll try the Etruscan version, assuming it doesn't contain more ash than teeth. You gather your things and step out into the cooler frigidarium. Your mouth feels oddly clean, but not fresh in the modern sense. The taste is earthy, metallic, vaguely herbal. You're clean, but you're also a little confused. Still, there's comfort in knowing that long before flavored gels and ergonomic brushes, people were already wrestling with the eternal question: how do I stop my breath from scaring the neighbors? You step back into the open air of Rome, sunlight now bouncing off the tiled roofs and marble columns. The streets are alive with clatter and callouts, vendors hawking olives and cheese, beggars shaking tin bowls, matrons scolding children with enough volume to echo through time. But you've just had your first taste of Roman oral hygiene, and like a true citizen, you're about to get obsessive about it. So now that your mouth still tastes like a burnt amphora, you might wonder, where did they get these ingredients anyway? You glance at the pouch of dentifrice tucked in your tunic, and suddenly you're thinking like a Roman pharmacist. Let's talk supply chains, ancient edition. First stop, Egypt. That gritty powder you used this morning? There's a solid chance part of it came from the Nile. Crushed ox hooves, a byproduct of Egyptian tanning shops, were commonly dried and pulverized to add texture to dentifrices. They were believed to strengthen teeth, or at the very least, make them shine. Think of it as collagen, ancient style. You're brushing your teeth with what might be described generously as artisanal hoof dust. Next ingredient? Burnt bones. Cattle bones, bird bones, and sometimes even exotic imports like elephant ivory dust from traders connected to Nubia or the Indian subcontinent. Because nothing says fresh breath like barbecued zebra tibia. Historians still argue whether Romans believed these materials held any actual healing power or were just crunchy. Some say the belief stemmed from sympathetic magic. Use a strong animal bone to strengthen your own bones, including your teeth. Others say it was just the easiest abrasive available when pumice ran low. And what about the smell? You might have caught a whiff of ammonia earlier, and yes, you guessed it, this brings us to a Roman hygiene secret not often discussed at dinner parties. Urine. Human. Fermented. And, apparently, imported from Portugal. You're probably blinking slowly now, questioning all your life choices. But ancient Romans genuinely believed urine had cleansing properties. It was rich in ammonia, and they used it for everything from bleaching tunics to whitening teeth. It wasn't unusual to find a jar of aged urine in wealthier homes, or outside local laundries, where fullers used it to clean fabric. Now imagine this, you're invited to a friend's domus for dinner. Before the feast begins, everyone gathers around the impluvium, dipping cloths into a small bowl of diluted urine and gently wiping their teeth. It's a bonding moment. You're all staring into each other's eyes while trying not to gag. Somehow, this is refinement. The phrase, mouthwash, suddenly takes on an entirely different emotional weight. And yet, Pliny the Elder, ever the fan of nature's most questionable offerings, praised the use of Portuguese urine as particularly potent. He believed it could not only whiten the teeth but also strengthen the gums. Of course, historians debate whether he meant this seriously or was just repeating marketplace folklore. Some scholars argue it was used only by lower classes, while others say aristocrats imported premium batches. Yes, there were grades. You pause on a stone bench beside the forum, trying not to overthink how much urine might still be clinging to your molars. A vendor across the square sells spices and incense. He offers you a tiny sprig of mint to chew, ancient gum. You accept, letting the fresh bitterness distract you from the aftertaste of ammonia and hoof. Mint wasn't just for breath freshening. It had spiritual uses too. Some Romans believed it cleansed the soul as well as the mouth. Others just liked that it didn't taste like ashes. You chew slowly, listening to the distant strum of a lyre drifting through the forum arches. A senator passes by, his toga dragging slightly on the dusty stones. You catch the glint of a small golden toothpick chain to his belt, an accessory and a practical tool. Romans didn't floss, but they were compulsive pickers. A meal was rarely complete without a few minutes of dignified poking and prodding, preferably in public. This is a world where dental health is status, identity, and sometimes superstition. You overhear two older women discussing a neighbor's receding gums. Apparently, it's a sign she's been cursed. Too much vinegar, one mutters. Or too little prayer. You keep chewing your mint and move along. Back in your own insula, a multi-story apartment block. You sit by the window, mixing your own blend of tooth powder for tomorrow. You grind bits of dried rosemary, a pinch of salt, some powdered bone, and the tiniest crumble of charcoal. You use a flat stone to mash it all together, then store it in a clay pot with a wax seal. A small jar of vinegar waits nearby to activate it in the morning. Your neighbor leans out of her window across the alley. She's picking something from her teeth with a fish bone. You nod politely. She nods back. It's just another day in the neighborhood. As the sun begins to sink behind the rooftops, turning the sky a warm clay red, you think about how much effort goes into a clean mouth. In modern times, you can pop a mint and rinse with something blue and suspiciously tingly. But in Rome, your options are richer, earthier, more experimental. You lie back on your thin cot, staring at the ceiling beams. Somewhere in the city, a new shipment of donkey milk and marble dust is arriving from the provinces. Next week's dental innovations, perhaps. And as sleep starts to pull at your mind, one final thought flickers across your consciousness. If you lived 2,000 years ago, you wouldn't just brush your teeth. You'd brag about it. You wake before dawn, again, not from a sense of discipline but because the neighbor's parrot has no concept of time or mercy. The streets are still hushed, dew hanging on clay shingles, and the sky bruised purple with the first hint of sun. Inside your small room, the clay pot of homemade dentifrice waits. It smells faintly of burnt rosemary and vinegar, which, you remind yourself, is a marked improvement over yesterday's urine and bone concoction. You scoop a small pinch, add a drop of vinegar, and gently rub it onto your teeth with a frayed bit of linen. It's gritty, herbal, sour, and slightly satisfying. A daily ritual with just enough bite to jolt you into wakefulness. Today, you're headed to the Subura, Rome's bustling underbelly. Crowded, loud, a bit chaotic, but it's also where some of the finest cosmetic artisans and street healers set up shop. You want to ask about something strange you heard in the baths yesterday? Powdered mouse brains for toothaches. Naturally, you're curious. Naturally, you're worried you might have misheard. As you walk, the sun climbs, and the city comes alive with clanging shutters, donkey carts, and merchants shouting about figs, glass beads, and goose liver. You pass a barber's stall where a man is being shaved with a sharpened seashell. Next door, a woman is selling tiny ivory scoops, used for scraping the tongue, a luxury for the hygiene elite. You reach the Subura and duck into a small perfumery, where the air is thick with spikenard and myrrh. The owner, a wiry woman with stained fingers, confirms it. Mouse brains, dried and crushed, are indeed recommended for infected gums. Only if the gods agree, she adds with a wink. You ask her if anyone actually uses it. She shrugs. We sell out fast. Historians still argue whether these prescriptions were taken seriously or if they were more like folk remedies wrapped in superstition. Some texts claim even physicians like Galen wrote of such cures, not endorsing them per se, but recording what the people believed. Others suggest the real benefit was placebo, or perhaps the strong smell scared the infection into retreat. You buy a tiny satchel, mostly for the novelty, and continue your exploration. Dental care wasn't only about keeping teeth clean, it was about keeping them in. Roman medicine viewed tooth loss as a symptom of internal imbalance. Too much black bile? Your molars might start to ache. Too much wine? gums begin to shrink. So prevention involved more than scrubbing and powders. It meant balancing your entire lifestyle: sleep, food, temper. Back at your local apothecary, you ask about toothache treatments. The man behind the counter, who smells of fennel and sarcasm, lists a few options: crushed sage soaked in vinegar, honey infused with ash, and, for the desperate, a warm compress made from crushed leeks and beer. You choose the sage mix. It's at least recognizable as food. As you walk home, you begin to notice how often people in Rome are tending their mouths. A merchant on the corner is swishing vinegar before spitting it into a gutter. A child nearby picks at his gums with a chicken feather. A noblewoman in a litter holds a small mirror and a thin silver pick, dabbing at her lips between stops. Everyone is doing something to their teeth. It's like a collective obsession. This makes sense when you remember that Romans didn't just care about hygiene, they cared about presentation. White, intact teeth were considered beautiful, even seductive. Poets wrote odes to lovers' teeth like they were pearls, and insults about bad breath or missing molars were social death sentences. Aulus Gellius once recorded a dinner guest being mocked because he whistled when he spoke. His missing incisors couldn't hold back the air. Poor man. It didn't matter how clever his arguments were. His dental gaps were louder than his voice. The elite went to great lengths to preserve their smiles. Some wealthy Romans hired Greek dentists, yes, that was a thing, who could craft rudimentary bridges and gold wire braces. These weren't common, and they didn't exactly work, but they were worn like jewelry for the mouth. Like a status symbol you could chew with. Meanwhile, poorer citizens had to get creative. A missing tooth might be filled with wax, or even carved bone from an animal. If you were lucky, a healer might cauterize the gum and say a prayer to Asclepius, the god of medicine. If you weren't lucky, someone in the alley might offer you a hammer. You pass a public fountain, watching a young boy rinse his mouth with cold water. His teeth chatter from the temperature, but he looks proud. He's done what his father does. He's part of the tradition. And then you remember something strange from earlier. The soap merchant in the forum said something about ashes from burnt snails being a mouth cleaner. You're almost afraid to ask if it's true, but curiosity always wins. You circle back and ask. She nods. Not every snail, she clarifies. Only the ones that eat thyme. Apparently, the resulting ash is thought to have antiseptic properties. It's rare, but some homes in the countryside keep tiny thyme-fed snails just for this purpose. The logic? If you want your teeth to smell nice, feed the fuel the right herbs. It's part farming, part magic, and part oral care experiment gone wildly off-script. Again, historians can't agree if this was mainstream practice or regional quirk. But the evidence exists, in fragments of letters, in scribbled herb guides, and in the occasional dig site with suspiciously snail-heavy ash deposits. You make a mental note to try it, after you've forgotten the taste of vinegar and mouse brains. Evening returns, and the city begins to dim. Torches flicker along the colonnades, casting long shadows that dance like silent priests. The last of the toothpick vendors packs up his goods, folding his display cloth with the care of someone handling fine silk. You return home, your satchel now heavier with powders, herbs, and peculiar remedies. You take one last look in your polished bronze mirror, checking your smile. Not bad. A little stained, maybe, but intact. Solid. Roman. Tomorrow, you'll try the snail ash. Or maybe the leek poultice. Or maybe, just maybe, skip a day and hope nobody notices. After all, even in ancient Rome, some mornings just don't taste minty. The next morning, you wake up with a sore jaw, not from a toothache, thankfully, but from grinding your teeth during some dream involving chariots and tax collectors. You rub your temples and shuffle toward the hearth, where yesterday's snail ash concoction rests in a small dish, quietly judging you. You said you'd try it today, didn't you? You pinch a bit between your fingers. It's gritty, slightly sweet, and smells faintly of thyme and something vaguely damp. You add a drop of honey, as the apothecary suggested, and gently press it to your teeth. The result is, well, it doesn't hurt, which is saying a lot for Roman dental experiments. You rinse with vinegar and whisper a short prayer to Asclepius, just in case. Outside, the city's already alive. Vendors shout from under their awnings, Temple bells ring across the rooftops, and the baker's boy down the street already has flour on his nose. It's market day, which means new ingredients, new rumors, and new remedies. You head to the Tiber riverfront, where imported goods arrive with the rhythm of the tides. Today, you're on a mission to find that strange black powder people have whispered about, rumored to be from Egypt, made from crushed charcoal and crocodile dung. You brace yourself. The docks are a tapestry of smells: saltwater, spices, oil, and something that might once have been fish. You weave between crates, baskets, and the occasional shouting match. A merchant with gold teeth, yes, literal gold, waves you over. He has what you're looking for. The powder is stored in a small clay pot with a wax seal. When he opens it, the scent hits, smoky, earthy, with an undeniable bite. For the breath, he says, smiling broadly, and for courage. You ask about the crocodile part. Only the ones from the Upper Nile, he explains, completely serious. The herbs makes the dung effective. Historians still debate this claim. While there is record of charcoal being used as a cleansing agent in Egypt and beyond, the crocodile dung element may have been more ritual than medical. Some argue it was part of a protective charm against illness. Others suggest it was symbolic, a way of drawing strength from a feared beast. You're not sure about the symbolism, but you do know this. Nobody will want to kiss you after this paste. You buy a tiny portion anyway. Curiosity is a cruel master. As you make your way back toward the market square, you stop by a scroll vendor and spot something intriguing: a faded text attributed to Scribonius Largus, a Roman physician to Emperor Claudius. You flip through the Latin scribbles until you find a section labeled De Dentium Cura, on the care of the teeth. It's a treasure trove. Here, Largus describes remedies made from myrrh, ground pepper, and even powdered eggshells. He recommends rinses of warm salt water, poultices made from barley, and occasionally, a strong drink to numb the pain. You nod. Some things never change. One passage in particular makes you snort: a tonic involving roasted lizard liver, steeped in sour wine. Apply nightly, it says. Do not swallow. Duly noted. Scribonius's remedies reveal something important. Roman medicine was a patchwork of Greek science, Egyptian ritual, and plain old superstition. They believed in the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, and thought that illness came from their imbalance. So a toothache? It wasn't just dental. It might be a sign your bile was running high or your sleep was off. Even your dreams could influence your diagnosis. One philosopher claimed that dreaming of broken teeth foretold personal loss. Another said it meant you'd come into money. That's ancient psychology for you. One dream, two wildly different outcomes. You close the scroll and tuck it under your arm. Back in the market, a crowd has gathered around a man selling chewing sticks, thin twigs from the Salvadora tree, known for their fragrant oil and mild antiseptic effect. He claims they clean the teeth, sweeten the breath, and prevent cavities. He bites down on one with theatrical flair, grinning through the fibrous wood. These sticks, you later learn, are precursors to the modern toothbrush. Romans chewed on them, frayed the ends, and used the resulting brush to scrub teeth and gums. Combined with ash, vinegar, or wine, they offered a more accessible alternative to more elaborate powders. You try one. It's surprisingly pleasant. Earthy, but not overwhelming. You even catch yourself smiling. Later that evening, you're invited to dinner at a friend's villa, a minor official with a taste for garum and gossip. You clean your teeth with a bit of sage vinegar, dab a drop of lavender oil onto your wrists, and don't forget the parsley leaf. Romans chewed it after meals to freshen breath and ward off bad luck. Plus, it's easier to carry than a pouch of charcoal dung. The meal is a parade of roasted quail, stewed lentils, honeyed carrots, and, naturally, more garum than anyone truly needs. You watch as your host excuses himself halfway through the meal, not for nature's call, but for a quick rinse. He returns with a smug grin and less spinach in his teeth. Later, you notice something odd in the atrium: a marble bust of a woman, probably a relative, and in her hand, a tiny silver toothpick. Not decorative, practical. Status and hygiene, immortalized in stone. You ask your host about it. Oh yes, he says. She believed in daily flossing. With gold thread. Of course she did. That night, as you prepare for bed, you reflect on what you've learned. Toothpaste in Rome wasn't one thing. It was a philosophy. A mix of caution, hope, and trial and error. It was crocodile dung and imported herbs, vinegar rinses and whisper prayers, chewing sticks and sage tonics. It was beauty, medicine, ritual, and sometimes just survival. You lie down, the faint scent of thyme still on your breath, and smile in the dark. Teeth intact, mouth freshish. Another day one. You wake before dawn to the rhythmic clatter of sandals on cobblestone and the low murmur of voices rising with the Roman sun. The city is stretching its limbs. You, however, are thinking about bones, specifically powdered mouse bones. Because today, you've decided to investigate one of the more curious claims circulating among the apothecaries, that pulverized mouse bones, when mixed with mint oil and goat's milk, can soothe aching gums and prevent cavities. You don't get a clear answer. One elderly herbalist shrugs and mutters something about vital essence. Another insists it's because mice nibble without ever losing their teeth. And because this is Rome, no one seems to question how exactly one powders a mouse skeleton without losing one's lunch. You head first to the Subura district, known for its bustling energy, overcrowded housing, and a peculiar smell best left unnamed. It's also a hub for back-alley remedies. Here, the stalls are full of concoctions: pickled onions for earaches, saffron for melancholy, and bundles of dried herbs meant to be hung above cradles to protect the baby's teeth. There's a man with a sharp jawline and sharper eyes selling bone powder, claiming it's from field mice caught under the light of a full moon. He mixes it with a few drops of vinegar and offers it to you on a tiny ceramic spoon. You sniff. It's dusty. You decline, politely, and move on. It's a good time to reflect on just how many Roman dental beliefs walk the fine line between the charmingly absurd and the oddly effective. Like using boiled fig juice as a mouth rinse to reduce inflammation, modern studies would nod at that. Or treating swollen gums with a paste of crushed peppercorns and honey, debatably painful, but at least flavorful. And then there's the infamous urine. Yes, you've heard the whispers. Imported from Portugal, no less. They say it's the best kind for whitening teeth. Rich in ammonia, aged like fine wine in sealed jars. Roman poets like Catullus even joked about it, accusing rivals of having such dazzling teeth only because they rinsed with Portuguese pea. You finally ask a respectable-looking apothecary about it. He doesn't flinch. Of course, he says as if discussing olive oil. It removes stains, brightens enamel. You must try it before you judge. You're not convinced. Historians still argue whether urine was ever used regularly or if this was more of a comedic exaggeration among Rome's satirists. Some believe it was used sparingly, perhaps diluted. Others insist it was a full-fledged part of Roman dental hygiene, even traded across the empire in amphorae labeled with region and vintage, like a particularly pungent perfume. You walk away from the conversation unsure what's worse: the possibility that it's true, or that someone made it up just to be funny. You pass by a small temple dedicated to Salus, goddess of health. A few women are lighting incense near the steps, offering prayers for sick children, aging parents, and, in one whispered plea, you swear you hear, "My tooth, the one in the back." Toothaches were terrifying in the ancient world. There were no antibiotics, no Novocaine, no easy fixes. A bad molar could mean weeks of pain, swelling, even fever. So rituals, prayers, and talismans were part of the arsenal. You remember an old story. Roman mothers would tie wolf teeth around their infants' necks to help with teething pain. The idea was that the fierce strength of the wolf would transfer to the child, making the pain easier to bear. Today, of course, we'd call this wildly unsafe jewelry for babies. Back then, it was desperate hope in tangible form. Later, you stop by the library at the Temple of Peace, hoping for quiet and scrolls. You find both. One document, an older, crumbling one, talks about a strange practice from the Etruscans, placing a dried beetle shell beneath the tongue to absorb the evil breath. The marginal notes warn not to swallow it. You smile. Just imagine trying to explain mouthwash to someone who thinks beetles make good chewing gum. By midday, the sun is high and the streets shimmer with heat. You duck into a shaded tavern, sip watered wine, and chew on a fennel seed to freshen your breath. Fennel, along with anise and mint, were common breath aids. Not always effective, but certainly better than mouse bones or vinegar. A merchant next to you is loudly recounting his latest shipment of resin from Arabia. Apparently, some of his wealthier clients use it as a base for tooth cleaning pastes. They blend it with crushed pearl, powdered marble, and exotic oils to make a kind of luxury scrub. Smooths the enamel, he says, tapping his own impressive smile. You glance at your reflection in the metal goblet. Your teeth aren't gleaming, but they're still intact. In Rome, that's a small miracle. That evening, as you walk home past the statues and shops, the golden light makes everything look slightly surreal. You pause at a fountain, dip your hands in the cool water, and rinse your mouth out for the fourth time today. You think about all the things Romans put in their mouths in the name of hygiene: ashes, vinegar, charcoal, urine, bones, pepper, honey, beetles, gold thread, and mouse powder. You also think about what they were chasing, not just clean teeth, but the appearance of health, status, and self-control. To them, a bright smile was proof you were civilized, that you belonged. As you drift off to sleep that night, wrapped in a linen sheet and serenaded by distant lyres, your thoughts wander. Somewhere, someone is powdering a mouse. Somewhere else, someone is praying for a molar to stop throbbing. And someone, maybe several someones, is still rinsing with something that should definitely never touch teeth. But you? You chew your mint leaves, give your teeth a gentle rub with your willow twig, and fall asleep with the smug satisfaction of someone who chose parsley over pea. The morning is cool and quiet. You wake to the faint bray of a donkey in the distance and the clinking of amphorae as a merchant unloads wares nearby. You stretch, run your tongue over your teeth, and consider, today might be the day you finally figure out why Roman breath fresheners always seem to smell like a spice rack. You wander into the Forum Boreum, where merchants are already shouting over each other about cumin and cinnamon and genuine Arabian myrrh. There's an almost festive energy, the air thick with smells, roasting grain, animal musk, and somewhere in the mix, sweet mint and licorice root. You duck into a small perfumer's stall, not your usual haunt, but relevant now. The perfumer greets you with a nod and points to a long row of tiny vials, some labeled with Greek words, others with barely legible Latin scrawl. He holds one up, a blend of cardamom, fennel, and coriander. For the breath, he says. Also good for attracting widows. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. Can't hurt. This particular interest in herbs for oral use wasn't just about hygiene, it was heavily tied to social impression. Romans were hyper-aware of how they smelled. And bad breath? That wasn't just embarrassing. It was moral failure. Halitosis, they believed, revealed a deeper decay of character, not just teeth. You stroll toward a nearby bench and unwrap a fig pastry while mentally tallying the Roman dental toolkit. Tooth scrapers? Chewing sticks? Common. Herbal rinses? Certainly. But what about powders? Yes, the powders. You visit a woman known as Aurelia, a widow with a shop full of jars and labeled boxes. She's a quiet figure, hands stained with pomegranate and clove oils. When you ask about dentifrices, she smiles softly and pulls out a tiny bowl. In it, crushed myrtle leaves, powdered oyster shell, dried mint, and a hint of salt. It tingles, she warns. She's not wrong. You dip a damp finger in and try it. It feels like brushing with the beach, gritty, sharp, and oddly effective. But the mint lingers pleasantly, and for a fleeting moment, you imagine this is what a Roman noble might use before an audience with the emperor. Aurelia explains that her recipe is based on one described by Pliny the Elder, that inexhaustible well of Roman natural history and questionable science. Pliny swore by mixing crushed bones with vinegar and herbs to clean the mouth and preserve the gums. He also, famously, recommended goat fat cooked with salt as a treatment for loose teeth. But maybe don't try that one before dinner. You ask her what ingredient she sells most often. She doesn't hesitate. Why? You ask. Because it smells like you know what you're doing, she replies. You head out and stroll through the baths of Caracalla, dodging towel-clad citizens and the echoing splash of plunges. You pass a man scrubbing his teeth with a soft reed dipped in alum water. He grimaces. "It keeps my gums tight," he explains. "And my wife from complaining." Alum, common in Roman times, was believed to stop bleeding gums and prevent tooth loosening. Some mixed it with vinegar, others with ash from burnt rosemary. The taste, you're told, is somewhere between seawater and regret. Later, in a quieter corner of the bath complex, you overhear two older men discussing the right way to whiten teeth. One swears by burnt bread. The other prefers charred animal horns ground to a fine ash and mixed with sage. Historians still argue whether these methods were routine or reserved for the wealthy. Dental hygiene in ancient Rome wasn't just a health issue, it was a social performance. You were what your smile said you were. You slip out of the baths and into a shadowed side street, where you find a physician's office marked by a wooden sign, a serpent coiled around a tooth. You're ushered inside by a young assistant and soon sitting on a bench beside jars of herbs, wax models of mouths, and what looks suspiciously like an ivory tooth extractor. The physician, a kindly man named Septimus, offers you a seat and a small scroll filled with his notes on tooth powders. He's experimenting with a blend that includes powdered marble, pine resin, and a hint of lavender. "Pleasant," he says, "and abrasive enough to make an impact." He lets you examine his tools, some bronze, others silver. One is shaped like a spoon, another like a small rake. There's a long-handled item with a flat end used to pack herbs into aching molars, and a needle-like device for, well, you decide not to ask. He tells you that while some patients prefer the harsh approach, others demand gentler options. They want teeth like ivory, he says, but fear the pain it takes to get them. On your way out, he hands you a small packet of powder. "Try it," he says. "It smells like spring." You sniff. Fennel and mint. Not bad. As the sun dips below the rooftops, you find yourself outside the temple of Minerva, goddess of wisdom and, curiously enough, dentistry. You watch as a young girl leaves an offering, a twig, perhaps from a sacred olive tree. You wonder if it's for her first lost tooth or a hope for stronger ones. The line between science and ritual is always blurry in Rome. Dental care wasn't just what you did, it was what you believed. And as the shadows stretch and the sky softens to violet, you lean against a pillar, your breath sweetened by herbs, your pockets lined with powders, and your mind filled with images. Priests whispering over aching gums, widows rubbing resin into their molars, merchants hawking dubious potions with too much confidence. You smile, gingerly, and think, maybe that pearl toothpaste isn't such a bad idea after all. You wake early the next morning with a mild ache in your jaw. Maybe it's the powder from yesterday, or maybe it's just too much fig cake before bed. Either way, you decide to investigate the stranger corners of Roman dental remedies, the ones that rarely make it into polite conversation. You begin in a tiny apothecary nestled behind the Subura, Rome's crowded, chaotic heart. The air is thick with incense, smoke, and the bitter scent of boiling roots. The shopkeeper, a wizened man with only 2 teeth of his own, waves you inside with a grin that might be either friendly or sarcastic. "What ails you?" he croaks. "My teeth," you say, "and my curiosity." He laughs and pulls out a small pot sealed with wax. Inside, a sticky gray paste that smells faintly like vinegar and something barnyard. "This," he says proudly, "is the good stuff." You lean closer. What's in it? Burnt staghorn, crushed barley, and mouse brains. You blink. "Come again." He grins wider. "Mouse brains. Powdered. It whitens and it's symbolic. Sharpness of the animal passes to your own teeth." You back away slightly, but not before he offers you a sample. You decline. And yet, he's not entirely making it up. Romans often blended their medicine with folklore. In the realm of teeth, the line between pharmacology and magic was especially blurry. For example, some recipes recommend rubbing the ashes of a dead dog's tooth onto the gums to cure toothache. Others suggest wearing an amulet made from wolf tooth to prevent decay entirely. Historians still debate whether these were common remedies or fringe superstitions. like the Roman equivalent of put garlic in your socks to cure the flu. But what's clear is this: if your teeth hurt, you were willing to try anything. You leave the apothecary and find yourself beside the river Tiber, where a group of laundresses are stomping clothes in stone basins. One of them catches you staring and waves you over. "Want to know the best tooth whitener in Rome?" she asks, eyes twinkling. You nod. She gestures to the basins. "Urine," she says proudly, "but only from Iberia. That's the strongest." You try not to recoil. Yes, it's true. Romans imported Portuguese urine for its high ammonia content, prized for whitening garments, and, reportedly, teeth. There are actual records, letters, even jokes about the widespread use of human urine in dental care. It sounds ghastly. It is ghastly, and yet effective. You try not to imagine the logistics of this. Instead, you ask if she's ever tried it herself. "Once," she says. "Didn't like the taste." Fair enough. Back in the city proper, you pass through the Vicus Tuscus, a shopping street jammed with stalls. You spot a street performer mimicking a tooth pulling gone wrong, complete with exaggerated screams and a fake molar the size of a date. The crowd laughs, and so do you. Toothache, apparently, was a universal experience, and a source of humor, especially when not your own. At the edge of the crowd, a woman sells packets of dried herbs and flowers, chamomile, sage, and thyme. You ask her if they're for tea. "No," she says. "Mouth rinses. For breath, pain, and prayers." You try one. Bitter but soothing. There's a faint numbing effect. A mild anesthetic from the sage, perhaps. She tells you her grandmother taught her the mix, and her grandmother before that. There's a certain comfort in that, a lineage of remedies passed down not through physicians, but through kitchens, gardens, and whispered instructions. You wander into a public latrine. Don't worry, it's cleaner than you expect. A man sits near the entrance, offering sponges on sticks and, oddly, a bowl of what looks like crushed mint. To refresh after, he offers. Apparently, dental hygiene didn't stop at the mouth. You politely decline but note the bowl's contents: mint, myrrh, and what might be powdered charcoal. Charcoal. That's another one. Used in tiny amounts, it could polish teeth, draw out infection, and absorb odor. Used too liberally, though, and it likely eroded enamel. Still, it was popular enough that even gladiators swore by it when they weren't busy knocking each other's teeth out. By the afternoon, you're at the house of a minor senator whose wife is obsessed with Greek beauty rituals. She invites you into her atrium and insists you try her homemade Hellenic toothpaste, which turns out to be a thick white mixture of honey, ground seashell, and rosewater. She applies it using a delicate ivory stick and then polishes it off with a soft linen cloth. "Taste?" she asks. You nod, surprised. "It's sweet. Almost elegant." "You must polish gently," she advises. "Too hard and you ruin the smile." She's not wrong. Some Roman elites had their teeth polished professionally, like shoes. Whitening, smoothing, sometimes even filing for symmetry. There are accounts of slaves trained specifically for dental upkeep. You imagine a kind of Roman dental spa, mud masks and molar scrubs. Historians still argue whether this level of attention was widespread or confined to the elite. But clearly, dental appearance carried social weight. A bright smile could open doors. A decayed one could close them, sometimes literally, if you were courting. As the sun sets and the golden light spills across red tiles and crumbling pillars, you realize just how many paths the Romans walked in search of a better smile. Some were scientific, others spiritual, and a few outright ridiculous. But they all shared a belief that the mouth mattered, that what you put into it, and how you cared for it, could shape not just your health, but your reputation, your relationships, and maybe even your future. And tomorrow, you still have more to explore. After all, you haven't even asked the soldiers what they do about toothaches on campaign. The next morning, you wake early and slip out of the house before the sun has climbed too high. The streets are quieter now, the city briefly caught between the restless energy of dawn and the clamor of full daylight. You've decided to leave the city walls today, just for a while, to visit the castra, the Roman military encampment outside town. If anyone has strong opinions about dental care under pressure, it's the Roman army. You walk for some time, sandals scuffing the dirt road, until you see the familiar square outline of the camp in the distance. Soldiers bustle around it in practiced rhythm, stacking supplies, inspecting weaponry, drilling in precise formations that look almost choreographed. There's a hum of industry in the air, and underneath it, the occasional grunt of exertion or barked command. You're ushered into a tent by a grizzled centurion with a beard that seems to defy all grooming norms. He sits you down, offers you a piece of dried apple, and immediately begins listing his ailments: bad knees, stiff neck, and teeth that ache every time it rains in Hispania. You ask him what soldiers do when their teeth hurt. He snorts. Pray it stops. Or pull it. Turns out, dentistry in the Roman legions was very much a do-it-yourself ordeal. You're shown the army's basic medical kit: tweezers, scalpels, bandages, and yes, a hook-like tool clearly intended for tooth extraction. "See this?" the centurion says, waving the wicked-looking thing. Only to be used when desperate and drunk. Apparently, there were no military dentists. Instead, if a tooth turned foul on campaign, the unlucky owner had two options: live with it or ask a friend to rip it out. Neither choice sounds particularly soothing. One soldier recalls tying a bit of string around a bad molar and attaching the other end to a javelin, thrown hard. You can't help but wince. Still, soldiers weren't completely without recourse. When off duty, they were known to chew on certain leaves, bay, laurel, and even mint, to numb pain or sweeten breath. Some carried little pouches of crushed anise seed, believed to relieve toothache and indigestion. Others rubbed vinegar or wine onto sore gums. You're offered a sip of the latter remedy, milky wine, thick with bits of crushed herbs. The taste is unsettling. Better than nothing, the centurion shrugs. Helps with the stink too. That's another issue you hadn't considered. Dental decay wasn't just painful, it could be odorous. In a tight, sweaty tent full of men who rarely bathed, bad breath could clear a room faster than a sword. So cleanliness, even minimal, was prized. Soldiers often carried rough cloths or strips of linen they'd use to wipe their teeth and gums. In some cases, they'd chew on frayed sticks, what we might now call primitive toothbrushes, rubbing away grime with whatever was handy. Interestingly, you spot a tiny clay pot on the centurion's table. Inside, a grayish powder. Crushed oyster shells and deer bone, he explains. For the younger recruits. Keep those teeth nice for the parade. Is it effective? You ask. Depends. Some say it works. Some say it just makes you bleed. Historians still argue about how widespread such powders were among the lower ranks of the military. While the wealthy could afford imported concoctions, soldiers had to improvise with local ingredients. Whatever could be crushed, dried, or stirred into vinegar. Later, while watching a training exercise, you overhear a pair of legionaries discussing a more divine option, praying to Apollo for relief. One claims he once made an offering of barley cakes and honey to the god and awoke the next day with no pain. The other suggests that was more about the honey than the god. But spiritual remedies were certainly part of the soldier's toolkit. Carvings and inscriptions from across the empire mention invoking gods and spirits for dental relief. In Britain, archaeologists have even found charms scratched onto tablets, asking deities to strike down the worm in my tooth. The worm. You've heard this one before. Many Romans believed that cavities and rot were caused by tiny worms burrowing into the tooth. The idea wasn't uniquely Roman either. Variations of the toothworm theory appear in Egyptian, Babylonian, and even medieval texts. There was no microscope to disprove it, and the sensation of throbbing pain probably felt like something crawling. So to fight the worms, people didn't just use medicine, they used ritual. Smoke, chants, even prayers whispered at night while holding a rooster feather to the cheek. Back at the castra, a younger soldier shows you a small bronze amulet. On one side, a crude engraving of a smiling face. On the other, what looks like a fawn. My mother gave it to me, he says. Said it would keep my teeth in my mouth. You ask if it's worked. So far, he says with a grin, flashing a row of surprisingly intact teeth. As you prepare to leave, the centurion gives you a final piece of advice. Brush if you can, rinse when you must. And if it gets real bad, he taps the side of his dagger, well, you know. You walk back toward the city, the warm dust curling around your sandals and the taste of herb wine still faintly on your tongue. The sky begins to darken as twilight edges in, and the lamps along the road flicker to life. Behind you, laughter and clanging shields fade into the distance. Ahead, the familiar chaos of Rome awaits, along with a few new remedies to try. You've learned something important today, not just about what Romans used to clean their teeth, but about how deeply those efforts were tied to identity, discipline, and pain tolerance. Even in war, the mouth mattered. And tomorrow, it's time to visit someone even fussier than the soldiers, the actors and performers of Rome, whose smiles were part of their business. You step into the bustling theater district just as the sun dips low, painting the sky with soft hues of amber and rose. The aroma of baked bread mingles with the faint whiff of beeswax and pitch from the nearby workshops where masks are crafted. Actors, playwrights, and their lively crews bustle about, rehearsing lines and adjusting costumes with a mix of anxious excitement and tired resignation. Here, in this world of drama and performance, your journey takes you to the mouths behind the masks, the teeth and smiles of Rome's entertainers. Unlike the stoic soldiers, these performers understood that a radiant smile could make or break a show. But teeth, alas, were often a source of worry. You learn quickly that the life of an actor was filled with smoky amphitheaters, heavy makeup, and a diet that leaned heavily on wine and dried fruits, all notorious for their impact on dental health. The actors' dentists, yes, there were specialists of sorts, were often barbers or itinerant healers who combined tooth care with a bit of showmanship. You find yourself in a small room cluttered with strange jars and tools, bronze tweezers, hollowed-out bones fashioned into picks, and a surprisingly delicate assortment of tooth powders. The lead actor, a flamboyant fellow named Lucius, offers you a tooth-cleaning ritual demonstration. He dips a thin stick of mastic resin, a fragrant tree sap known for its antiseptic properties, into a jar of crushed charcoal mixed with honey and a pinch of pumice. This, he explains, was the go-to toothpaste for many performers, a concoction that scrubbed teeth while masking odors. As you watch, he rubs the gritty paste over his teeth, his lips curling into a smile that somehow manages to look both theatrical and relaxed. The honey sweetens the mix, while the charcoal adds that satisfying abrasive quality. Yet the smell is, well, an acquired taste, like campfire mixed with a hint of burnt sugar. Historians still argue whether such abrasive powders might have done more harm than good, slowly wearing down enamel and exposing teeth to decay. But for performers, the immediate benefit of fresher breath and a cleaner mouth outweighed the risks. After all, appearances on stage demanded it. Lucius also shares a quirky tidbit. Some actors believed that gargling with a diluted mixture of vinegar and herbs before performances not only refreshed breath but also cleared the voice. You imagine the sharp tang of vinegar cutting through the heavy air of the amphitheater, a ritual as much about confidence as hygiene. Then, as if on cue, a troupe member strolls in munching on a stick of fennel seed, another popular breath freshener of the time. This small, crunchy habit, you realize, was an early precursor to modern chewing gum, offering a burst of flavor and a gentle scrubbing action between scenes. You pause to consider the role of such rituals in a society that valued oral health not just for survival but for social standing. In a city where gossip and glances could sway fortunes, a bright smile was currency. The actors knew this intimately. After all, their entire craft depended on captivating an audience. Yet, beneath the polished veneer, dental decay was common. Dried figs, sweet wine, and the frequent use of honey were beloved but teeth-unfriendly. Remedies ranged from rinsing with sea salt water to rubbing crushed mint leaves on gums, natural antiseptics in an age before toothpaste tubes. The debate among scholars continues on how sophisticated these dental care routines truly were. Were they thoughtful regimens or desperate improvisations? Either way, the actors' blend of practical care and superstition paints a vivid picture of a time when health, appearance, and art collided. As twilight deepens, you bid farewell to Lucius and his troupe, the distant cheers of an audience rising from the amphitheater as a play begins. You carry with you the scent of mastic and the taste of honeyed charcoal, a sensory reminder of Rome's colorful stage life. The night calls you onward, to a place where the wealthy and powerful keep secrets of oral care behind marble walls and silver spoons. You find yourself walking through the elegant neighborhoods of Rome's elite as dusk settles, the cobblestones cool beneath your feet. The air here carries a faint scent of rose oil and freshly ground spices, a far cry from the soldiers' camp or the bustling theater district. Behind grand marble doorways, ornate frescoes whisper tales of luxury, and here, the wealthy take their dental hygiene very seriously indeed. In these marble-clad villas, you meet Claudia, a matron with a sharp wit and even sharper teeth. She welcomes you into her private chambers, where silver basins and fine linens suggest a daily ritual far removed from the gritty brushes of common folk. Claudia's favorite toothpaste? A curious blend of crushed coral, powdered charcoal, and honey, combined with fragrant herbs like myrrh and rue. She hands you a small alabaster jar containing this paste, inviting you to inhale the complex mixture. It smells faintly medicinal but also oddly comforting, like a garden after rain. You learn that wealthy Romans prized such ingredients not only for their cleaning properties but for their social symbolism. Coral was thought to ward off evil, myrrh to soothe gums, and rue to purify. The combination promised not just a clean mouth but spiritual protection. Interestingly, some Roman elites even imported exotic ingredients from distant corners of the empire, powders made from crushed pearls, ground amber, and finely milled spices like cinnamon and clove. These were luxury items, not just for taste but to display status. However, historians still debate how effective these lavish mixtures really were. While abrasive powders could polish teeth, they might also damage enamel over time. Some scholars argue that these dental pastes were more about ritual and prestige than health. Claudia shares a quirky family tradition. Before important gatherings, her servants would massage her gums with a mixture of crushed mint and vinegar, believed to invigorate the mouth and brighten the smile. The sharpness of vinegar might sound harsh, but in small doses, it worked as a natural antiseptic. You also hear of a lesser-known practice among the wealthy, using a chew stick called a miswak, imported from Arabia. These sticks, fragrant with natural oils, doubled as toothbrushes and breath fresheners. They were prized for their convenience and subtle medicinal qualities. As Claudia gestures toward a mirror framed in ivory, you catch your reflection, your teeth dusted with a faint layer of paste, your breath carrying a faintly herbal note. You think about the contrast between this refined routine and the soldier's gritty remedies or the actor's charcoal paste. But one thing connects them all: the desire for cleanliness, comfort, and a little confidence. Teeth, after all, were a window into health and character in a society that prized appearances. Before you leave, Claudia offers you a final piece of advice. Remember, no matter the paste or powder, a gentle hand and patience make all the difference. Stepping back into the cooling evening air, you feel the weight of centuries of tradition resting lightly on your shoulders, a mosaic of ingredients, rituals, and stories that shaped the Roman smile. Tomorrow, your journey will take you beyond Rome itself, to the bustling marketplaces where exotic goods and oral care curiosities come to life in surprising ways. The marketplace buzzes with life as dawn breaks, spilling golden light over stalls piled high with fragrant spices, vibrant fabrics, and curious trinkets from every corner of the empire. Here, in the heart of trade, the story of Roman toothpaste takes a colorful turn, revealing just how far and wide the quest for a fresh mouth really traveled. You stroll past merchants hawking jars of exotic balms, sticks of fragrant resin, and powders ground from strange minerals. The air hums with the mingling scents of cinnamon, frankincense, and a hint of salted fish, reminders of the empire's sprawling reach and eclectic tastes. Among these wares, you discover the prized ingredient of many toothpaste recipes: powdered pumice. This gritty volcanic rock was a favored abrasive, perfect for scrubbing away stains and polishing teeth. Sellers boast of its whitening power, though you can't help but wonder if all that rubbing might leave teeth a bit too sensitive. Historians still argue whether pumice-based pastes actually helped prevent decay or simply wore down enamel faster, leaving teeth vulnerable in the long run. It's a delicate balance between shine and sensitivity, even in ancient times. Your attention is drawn to a vendor offering a mysterious breath refresher, a small bag of crushed seeds, dried flowers, and a touch of powdered ambergris. Ambergris, a waxy substance produced by whales, was highly prized not just in perfume but also for its supposed ability to neutralize unpleasant odors. The idea of chewing whale spit to freshen breath certainly strikes you as one of history's quirkiest beauty hacks. Nearby, another stall touts sticks of licorice root and twigs from the mastic tree, both chewed as early toothbrushes. The resinous stick, with its gentle taste and antiseptic oils, doubles as a mouth-cleaning tool and a subtle breath freshener. You find yourself imagining the rhythmic chewing, a quiet moment of oral care amid the market's lively chaos. You overhear a lively debate among traders about the virtues of imported ingredients. Some swear by crushed pearls from the East, claiming they add a brilliant sheen, while others favor the earthy tones of local volcanic ash. The rivalry is spirited but friendly, proof that dental care was a topic of genuine interest across social strata. A curious merchant leans in and shares a lesser-known fact. Some Roman recipes included tiny amounts of crushed mouse brains, believed to strengthen gums and teeth. You blink, mildly horrified but intrigued. This odd ingredient hints at the complex interplay of superstition and science in ancient medicine. The market's energy pulses around you, a sensory tapestry woven with scents, colors, and sounds, reflecting a world where oral hygiene was both necessity and indulgence. As you leave the stalls behind, you carry with you the taste of crushed resin and a newfound appreciation for Rome's vast and varied toothpaste traditions. Ahead lies a quieter, more reflective space, Roman baths, where oral care mingled with relaxation and ritual in soothing, watery embrace. You step into the tranquil sanctuary of a Roman bathhouse, where the steady splash of water mingles with the soft murmur of conversation and the faint scent of lavender oils. The steam rises in gentle wisps, blurring the edges of marble columns and mosaic floors, wrapping you in a warm, soothing embrace. Here, hygiene was not just about cleanliness but a ritual to calm body and mind, a perfect place to explore how Romans cared for their teeth amid these soothing surroundings. As you settle into a warm pool, you watch a group of bathers pass around a small container filled with a paste made from crushed oyster shells and powdered charcoal, mixed with a hint of honey. This unusual blend was favored by some for its mildly abrasive qualities and sweet flavor, believed to polish teeth and freshen breath after a long day. Honey, you recall, wasn't just a sweetener but a natural antiseptic, helping to fight the bacteria that might cause tooth decay. Its use in dental care shows a clever blend of practical science and everyday ingredients, proving that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most enduring. Historians still argue whether the use of such abrasive materials like oyster shells might have worn down tooth enamel prematurely. But within the relaxing ambience of the baths, the benefits of cleanliness and comfort seem to outweigh those concerns. You notice a quieter ritual unfolding nearby, bathers rinsing their mouths with a diluted mixture of vinegar and water, often scented with mint or rosemary. The sharp tang of vinegar might make you wince, but its antiseptic properties were well known, and this gargling practice helped soothe gums and reduce bad breath. It was, in a way, an ancient mouthwash. A particularly curious tradition catches your eye. Some bathers chew on sprigs of rue or myrtle while soaking, believing these herbs helped strengthen teeth and gums. The gentle bitterness of the leaves was thought to cleanse the mouth from within, a natural remedy woven into daily life. In the bathhouse's quieter corners, you overhear tales of wealthy patrons who commissioned personal tooth-cleaning slaves, trained in the art of dental care, using specialized tools to clean, polish, and massage gums with herbal pastes. This level of attention underlines how seriously Romans took the appearance and health of their teeth. You reflect on how these oral care rituals intertwined with broader Roman values, hygiene, relaxation, and social bonding. The baths were not only places to clean the body but spaces to nurture well-being, where dental care was part of a holistic approach to health. As you prepare to leave the warm, steamy tranquility of the baths, you carry with you a sense of calm and the faint taste of honey and herbs, a gentle reminder that even centuries ago, the path to a healthy smile was deeply connected to self-care and community. Tomorrow, you'll venture into the quieter countryside, where rustic remedies and folk wisdom shaped the teeth-cleaning habits of ordinary Romans far from the city's grandeur. You find yourself wandering the gentle hills and rustic villages of the Roman countryside, where life moves at a slower pace and oral care takes on a simpler, homespun character. Here, far from the marble palaces and bustling markets, ordinary Romans rely on folk remedies passed down through generations to keep their smiles healthy and their breath fresh. Your first encounter is with Lucia, a kindly village woman tending her herb garden. She shows you a small wooden box filled with crushed sage leaves, powdered seashells, and a pinch of dried mint, ingredients that make up her homemade toothpaste. The scent is earthy and calming, with a faint hint of the sea carried by the shells. It's a blend crafted from what's at hand, a testament to resourcefulness and tradition. You learn that sage was prized not only for its antiseptic qualities but also for its soothing effect on sore gums. Powdered seashells provided a gentle abrasive, enough to clean but soft enough to avoid damage. Mint's fresh, cooling burst helped banish bad breath, making this mixture both practical and pleasant. Interestingly, some villagers use charcoal from burned olive pits as a tooth cleaner. While it seems rough, this black powder was believed to absorb impurities and whiten teeth naturally. You can't help but think about how this charcoal echoes the more theatrical black pastes used by actors in the city. Different uses, similar ingredients. Historians still argue how effective these rustic remedies truly were, especially when compared to more elaborate recipes of the urban elite. But for rural Romans, these simple mixtures balanced effectiveness with accessibility, blending nature's gifts with everyday wisdom. Lucia shares a quirky bit of local lore. Chewing on small twigs from the fig tree was thought to strengthen teeth and even brighten smiles. The rough texture acted as a natural toothbrush, and the slight sweetness of fig sap made it a favored choice. It's charming to imagine villagers gently scrubbing their teeth with twigs, a peaceful ritual connecting them to the land. You notice that the communal nature of village life meant that oral hygiene was often a shared affair. Neighbors exchanged tips, herbal blends, and even friendly teasing about whose breath was freshest. This gentle social bond turned a daily chore into a moment of connection. As you watch Lucia gently apply her herbal paste, you feel the soothing rhythm of rural life seep into your bones. Teeth cleaning here isn't just about appearance. It's about health, tradition, and the quiet care woven through simple acts. The countryside's calm gives way to the faint noise of distant chariot wheels and city bustle, reminding you that tomorrow's journey will take you back to Rome's busy streets, where even the smallest detail of toothpaste tells a big story. The sun rises over Rome once again, and you find yourself back among the city's cobblestone streets, this time near a modest apothecary tucked between bustling taverns and the clang of the blacksmith's hammer. Here, remedies and curiosities await in dusty jars and clay pots, revealing how medicine and oral care intertwined in surprising ways. Inside, the apothecary's shelves boast an array of ingredients: powdered bark, crushed herbs, dried flowers, and something that makes you pause, tiny vials of fermented fish sauce, known as garum. This pungent sauce, beloved in Roman cuisine, also found its way into toothpaste recipes, believed to help cleanse the mouth and combat bacteria. You wrinkle your nose at the idea, but the locals swear by its effectiveness. Historians still debate whether the antibacterial benefits of garum outweighed its rather challenging aroma, but its inclusion shows the practical mindset of Roman health practices. Sometimes effectiveness trumped pleasantness. Imagine brushing your teeth and tasting the unmistakable tang of fermented fish. It's a reminder that hygiene in the ancient world didn't always smell like a mint commercial. Next to the garum, you spot a tin labeled gold dust, actual flakes of gold used in some elite pastes. Far from just luxury, the Romans believed gold had healing properties and could soothe gum disease. You smile, imagining a patrician brushing their teeth with a glittering concoction, shining both in wealth and dental hygiene. The apothecary's assistant mentions an odd little fact. Some recipes called for powdered mouse brains, thought to strengthen teeth and gums, a practice that modern minds find peculiar, but which was grounded in the ancient theory of sympathetic magic, where like cures like. This quirky ingredient highlights how science and superstition often walked hand in hand. You watch as a customer carefully mixes a paste of charcoal, crushed herbs, and a touch of honey, preparing for the daily ritual. The blend is thick, gritty, and fragrant with rosemary, a far cry from today's smooth gels. This process, slow and deliberate, becomes almost meditative, a moment to pause amidst the city's frenzy. In this small shop, oral care feels like a bridge between nature, tradition, and early medicine. The interplay of ingredients reveals a culture both practical and imaginative, embracing all manner of substances in pursuit of a healthy smile. As you step back onto the street, the distant sounds of children playing and vendors shouting blend into a comforting urban symphony. The story of Roman toothpaste has unfolded from volcanic pumice to fish sauce, from sage to gold, each ingredient a chapter in a rich tapestry of daily life. Tomorrow, you'll drift into quieter thoughts, winding down this journey with reflections on what these ancient habits teach us about care, ritual, and the simple act of brushing our teeth. The day softens into evening as you settle into a quiet corner of Rome, the last traces of sunlight filtering through olive branches. Here, in the fading light, you reflect on the curious journey you've taken, through bustling baths, rustic villages, and fragrant apothecaries, exploring how the Romans cared for their teeth with ingredients that might surprise your modern senses. You remember the gritty powders of crushed oyster shells and charcoal, the sharp tang of vinegar rinses, the sweet antiseptic kiss of honey, and even the daring addition of fermented fish sauce. Each element tells a story, not just of dental hygiene, but of a people blending practicality, belief, and a dash of ingenuity in their daily lives. Historians still argue whether these remedies truly preserve teeth as well as today's modern pastes, but what's undeniable is the care woven into every gesture. Tooth cleaning was more than a routine. It was a ritual, a moment of self-attention amid the swirl of Roman life. You imagine the gentle scrubbing with twigs in countryside homes, the delicate polishing with gold dust in city mansions, and the communal sharing of recipes in bathhouses, all creating a mosaic of practices as varied as the empire itself. The smell of ancient pastes might not make you swoon, but the knowledge that these rituals contributed to health and confidence adds a comforting layer. Perhaps, in their own way, the Romans understood the quiet power of a smile, and how tending to it connects us across millennia. Now, as you prepare to close your eyes, you carry with you the humbling reminder that even in a world without modern science, people found ways to care, to soothe, and to feel a little brighter each day. Let your breath slow and your thoughts drift, knowing you've traveled far but return with a simple truth. The ritual of care is timeless, and the pursuit of a clean, healthy smile is a gentle thread linking us to the past. Now, slow your breathing, soften your thoughts, and let the quiet calm wrap around you like a warm, comforting cloak. The gentle sounds of the past fade softly, leaving only peace.